first of all, I think it's very thoughtful of you to have provided us with these questions.
Oh, good. You just don't want me to answer them all now, do you?
Well, why did you put this on the album, actually, these questions? Why Stop Making Sense? Why a movie? Why tour? Why do the musicians come out gradually? Are those the questions that you're always asked?
Well, I thought they were the obvious questions to ask about this thing, the movie and the record. And I thought, well, what's really desired is the answers to these questions. But I thought I would just give the questions rather than the answers.
Are there answers?
Well, I'll tell you. I answer most. I did this interview with myself on videotape, and I answer a lot of these on that.
Well, considering that this is a radio show and that...
Okay.
Well, now, didn't you have some problems at the beginning of the tour because you had all that computerized lighting, and it's something like if a solo took longer than it was supposed to, the lights wouldn't work right, or...
No,
didn't I hear something
there
about
was
that?
Yeah, there was problems with getting it to look the way I wanted. I wanted it not to look. It was fairly complex, but I didn't want it to look complex. I didn't want people to see it and go, "Boy, that's complicated." So that took a while to get it running smoothly. But no, if a solo was longer than the night before, they would just the computerized thing would just meant that you would push a button and it would go to the next cue. So you had a lighting cue after the solo, and then you just push a button when whoever finished playing, and it would go to that, and then push another button when that was done, and it would go to the next thing. So the only thing that would really throw them for a loop would be if we did something out of order, but usually that didn't happen, which doesn't hurt at all.
But you're not going to perform in the movie. There's not going to be scenes of the band performing, or yes? No.
Mm-mm. No, I haven't done that, which is kind of a surprise. And I guess what I wanted to avoid was that I'm not sure. That I'm not exactly sure of.
Well, when you planned the concert and you started out with you alone on the stage and then it built up, is that something that...
And I tried working with Len and Edna, the singers, in the same way. And it worked a little bit, but not quite. I mean, it was like I was trying to get them to dance like me, almost. Which would have just looked... It would have looked real funny, I think. Oh, gosh, that would have looked weird.
Did they try?
They tried at home, at my house, and we tried it in hotel rooms and stuff on the tour. But very quickly they kind of smoothed it out and made it what we'd worked on more fluid and funky. Whereas the way I did it, it was always pretty jerky looking.
You really have quite... I mean, why are the songs in the why are the songs on the album Stop Making Sense in a different order than they are in the movie Stop Making Sense? Aren't they?
Yeah, some of them are. Mm-hmm.
Why'd you do that?
Oh, well, the way songs kind of segue into one another on a record is a little bit different. It seemed to play better as a record in a different order.
Are you horrified by a lot of stuff that's happened with video? I mean, being as interested as you are in video, and I imagine it's a pretty big part of your life in terms of just playing with it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and having the equipment and the technology and using it and taking advantage of it. Just even the way you said you would practice things, you know, in front of your own and then looking back. Do you relate at all to the Coca-Cola that's on television? Do you know what I mean? It's like... all the clips.
Oh yeah, I like some of them. I
read where you said most of it makes you ill.
But the thing that bothers me is that I think of videos as one thing and music as something else, and occasionally they fit together real well. But I think it's disappointing when so the music industry relies so heavily on videos to get the acts over, because there's plenty of good music that doesn't need a video, or isn't helped by having a video. And it's a shame if that kind of stuff would all get overlooked. I'm not saying cult stuff or whatever. There's plenty of mainstream acts that are that kind of get lost in the shuffle or overlooked because they're not video oriented. And I like the idea of the two things existing simultaneously, but not feeling that one has to rely too heavily on the other. And there's people whose videos I like, but I don't go out and buy their record.
Do you go buy records?
Oh yeah.
You do?
Uh-huh.
What was the last record you bought?
I just bought a couple of African ones, and I bought some Tex-Mex cassettes when I was in Texas. I think I bought the Frankie Goes to Hollywood record, and a couple other dance mix kind of things like that.
I've asked you this before, but I'm curious to know each time I speak to you what you think about this. You started out in a scene that you didn't like being lumped in, as a sort of a punk scene, but it was probably the only place you could play was CBGB's or whatever in 1974, with a group of bands that did at the time seem very exciting. Patti Smith, Television, Ramones, Blondie, so forth. I mean, the Ramones are still together, but basically Talking Heads is really the band that survived that the most and the biggest and so forth. And why do you think that's so?
In some cases, drugs, I guess. But that's kind of too easy an explanation.
No, but it's true.
It's true in some cases, but it's too easy. I mean, there's probably another reason why did somebody get heavily into drugs just when they were doing so well, or starting to do well, or whatever. But other than that, I can't figure it out either. Because I know there's so many bands that I thought were great, and had some sort of limitless possibilities of what they could do. And you just kind of, one by one, you see them kind of go down for the count. And try and pick up the pieces. Which was real, kind of sad. But a lot of people are still around. Tom Verlaine's still making records.
That's about it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Patti's in Detroit. The Ramones are still together, sort of. I mean, different configuration.
Mm-hmm.
Blondie, well, two of them are playing in another band, but...
Well, yeah, I don't know. I didn't...
It happened more gradually also, in a way, with Talking Heads,
Yeah, it sure
Blondie
did
get a very big pop success all of a sudden, and
That's
Patti
an awful
couldn't
lot
deal with that kind of a thing.
That's an awful lot to deal with. And unless...
Some people can't wait.
I know, but then that doesn't give them any time to figure out what they're going to do. They end up... I think if there's... unless they've got really everything worked out when they're starting out in clubs, then they end up grabbing a little bit from here and there, like, and not really doing what's right for them. They'll end up, a male performer will end up, if they have to go from playing clubs to playing big places, they'll end up figuring, okay, I'm going to play a stadium. I'll either move like Mick Jagger or Roth.
David Lee.
David Lee Roth. I mean...
Hey, Madison Square Garden, why have you been so reluctant to do that?
I don't think most of the time it doesn't sound so good in there.
It's not bad. It's better than Radio City.
Yeah, it's better than Radio City, but we thought that Forest Hill sounded real good, and it holds almost as many, and the seats are on such an incline that everybody is much closer to the stage, or at least they seem to be. So we've been sticking with that for now. Although it means everybody's schlepping out to Queens, which is a kind of a drag for a lot of people, but we hope it's worth it.
Okay. Why did you call it Stop Making Sense?
Why Stop Making Sense? It's advice to myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think you make sense a lot?
I think I have a tendency to try to put things into neat parcels and hope that they make logical sense, when actually that's not the way I work at all. When I look at a lot of the stuff I've done, it's been intuitive or out of feeling, rather than because it makes sense.
You think the best stuff is that?
Yeah, a lot of it. I don't know if it's the best, but it seems the best to me, because I can't figure out where it came from.
Do you now allow for that to happen when you're doing any kind of project, musical or writing or any kind of creative thing? Or even with this tour, how fixed was all of that? Or how much space did you leave for that kind of improvisation? And
I wanted to have it fixed enough so that it couldn't go wrong, let's say. If nothing spontaneous happened on a given night, that it would still be a lot happening and still be enough to be a good show. So it was like laying a framework. It was really pretty meticulously planned out, but only enough so that there was a framework to allow those kind of spontaneous things to happen off of that. And a lot of the things that got formalized and put into the show were the result of somebody doing something spontaneously one night, and then we said, hey, that was real good, you should keep doing it. And sometimes they'd keep doing it, or sometimes I'd keep doing it, and sometimes they'd forget.
it seemed like it was the kind of tour that you might have liked to have kept in one place, was it?
That would always be ideal, I would think, if you're doing kind of a show that has a lot of staging elements. The ideal is like they do in Broadway shows, and you put it in one theater and everybody has to come there to see it. But that's kind of impractical. A lot of people can't afford to do that.
To fly to one city,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, you did have problems, for example, at Forest Hills. I remember when the stage couldn't accommodate the set.
Yeah,
Wasn't that thought out in advance?
it was. I told everyone what was needed, and often the promoters would just lie.
Really?
Yeah, or whoever would just say, yes, it's going to be fine, and then you pull up in trucks and you find out somebody's been telling a fib.
Now, what would happen when that would happen? Would you freak out? I mean,
Yeah.
do you have temper tantrums?
Sure,
Do you go
you bet I
crazy
did.
and yell and scream?
For a good part of it, yeah, I'd have temper tantrums when that happened, and then at some point I just became resigned to the fact that on any one night it would never be exactly the way it was supposed to be. Especially when the film looked like it was going to happen. Then I could relax because I could figure that at least we'll get it the way it's supposed to be on film. And if one song doesn't look the way it was designed to look, well, that's okay. Because there's still the performance and the music, which is the main thing. And that really has to carry it anyway. I mean, all the lighting and staging tricks won't support a boring performance.
Did you plan to do this as a movie? I mean, when you first started this tour, was it something that you knew you wanted to do, or did it evolve sort of midway through?
Well, it evolved midway through. When I saw that the show was working, and it was worked as a show, and everybody was enjoying it, then I thought, boy, I'd really like to capture this. And I thought about doing it the easy way on video. But then I thought, well, the whole thing was, the way it was designed was kind of cinematic, so I thought, well, film would really be the ideal. So I thought I'd hold out to try and capture it that way.
Why would it have been easier on video? Cheaper.
It's cheaper than film stock.
Did you edit on video, or did you edit in film?
Yeah, we edited on video.
So you filmed it and then you edited it on video, and yeah,
and then turned it back into a film.
that's the good way to do it.
And it really worked. That really worked out well for this, because when you have a whole bunch of cameras shooting, say, the same thing simultaneously, and then with video you can run them all on separate TVs simultaneously and just pick out what's the best shot, or the most appropriate one to cut to if you don't know which one to go to. Whereas with narrative films, you don't need to do that quite as much.
You had an awful lot to do with the creation and the design and the look of the show, with the way it started, or did you do it with the whole band? I mean, it's pretty much giving credit to you.
Yeah, I kind of drew it out.
Did you tell them what to wear?
Not specific things, but yeah, put what kind of feel or what kind of color.
Colors, yeah, you did?
Yeah, or what color range. And it was partly just, I wasn't trying to impose my taste in dress. It was kind of said, well, anything within this color range, but whatever style you like. And that was because, say, if someone wore a bright yellow shirt, and the lights at some points are kind of yellowish, right? A lot of stage lights are. They'd glow like a beacon, and throughout the whole thing, for no appropriate reason.
What I'm curious about is how you could maintain the amount of control that you did in not telling them exactly what to wear, because I mean, there are some things that sort of stand out visually in the film that look like they could be a little more streamlined in terms of costume things. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine if you had really had your choice, there would have been other things.
Yeah, I would have been more specific and say, this is what you have to wear every night. But I felt like, gosh, I felt like, well, what we're doing is really a lot. The whole show is going a lot further than anything we've done before, and I couldn't swallow the idea of telling people, that I'd worked with as musicians for so long, what to wear. That seemed, I couldn't. Now I can understand it. It seems perfectly logical, but at the time it seemed like, gosh, these are my friends and everything. I can't tell them how to dress.
But they didn't resent you sort of doing the rest of the show.
No.
So that's the last bastion of dictatorial realm. Why did you wear the suit? How did that costume come about, that big suit?
I don't know. That was one of those inspirations that I mentioned earlier, that it kind of came out of the blue and kind of fully blown in my mind. I drew it out on a napkin. And it seemed perfectly right at the time, because I was thinking, well, I'd like to wear some kind of costume or do something with my body or do something like that. And I just sort of let that idea sit for a while, and all of a sudden it said, that's it. This big square boxy suit, like a businessman gone geometric or something. And that just seemed the perfect solution. Although it took ages to get it to look the way it...
Really?
To look, I mean, drawing it on a napkin takes about 30 seconds. But then getting it to look that way...
Who made it?
A woman named Gail Blacker who works downtown, who does clothes for boutiques and that kind of thing.
Was there something in it, like some kind of padding or stiff thing or something to keep it holding?
There's a whole lot of padding in the shoulders,
uh-huh,
so that my arms, instead of coming out really where your shoulders are, they come out somewhere closer to my waist. And under the pants, I wear this big girdle that expands my hips by about 6 or 7 inches on each side. And then I put the pants on top of that.
That must be comfortable.
It's not that bad.
Really? You could move around it and dance.
We had it made out of linen, so that it could breathe and I wouldn't turn into a little sauna in there. And even the padding is made out of mostly fabric where the air can circulate through. So it wasn't that bad.
Did you have more than one?
Yeah. I had 2 different styles.
Really?
Yeah, the other one was built by a different place, and that one was a pinstripe polyester one.
Polyester, that must have been hot.
That one was
that
hotter.
That doesn't
yeah.
breathe.
Yeah, that was hotter.
I haven't even seen that, I don't think. You didn't wear that in New York?
No.
No, well, that's good. Have you moved to Los Angeles?
Mm-mm. I've just been working out of there, putting together a film project for the band's next thing.
Now, is that for the band, or is that a serious acting role for you that sounds like it's based on Miss Lonely Hearts or something? No? Is it anything like that?
No, it's more a serious directing role for me, and the band all doing the music. And I guess we'd all be in it a bit, but I don't want it to be about us.
But now, this is about a lovelorn columnist?
No, it's gosh, I dropped that. It's mainly about that was one character that I ended up cutting out. But it's about characters in a small suburban town in Texas, and on the building up to their 150th birthday of the town, which is next year, the sesquicentennial is what they call it in Texas.
How do you know this?
Made quite a few trips there, doing research.
Really? Which town?
Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin.
And you're writing this?
No, I started off with, I wrote with another guy kind of a story outline, and then some writers, Beth Henley and Steve Tobolowsky, who do screenwriting and playwriting, they did a draft, and then I took that draft and re-edited it and added stuff of my own, and so now it's in about the third draft. So it's kind of, they did the initial one and then I've added to it and taken things away and whatnot, and so it's essentially the three of us.
You're going to direct it?
Yeah.
And you're going to star in it?
Well, I don't know about that. I'd rather just be in it here and there. Because I feel like directing something and putting yourself in the main role sounds like a big ego trip. and that's not what I'm interested in doing.
But you do that with music. What's the difference with film?
I'm not sure. Something feels different about it.
Well, it's new.
Yeah, I guess so.
Maybe. You haven't done it before.
Uh-huh.
But having the band in it, is that sort of an accommodation? I mean, do you have to have the band in it? Or would you naturally pick those people to be in this movie?
No, it would be because for fun, and because I think with the band doing all the music and the band's name attached to it, one would expect to see them in there here and there.
Having put out the live album, the name of this band is Talking Heads, were you kind of did that reinforce your awareness of the evolution of the band? You know, listening to all the old stuff and putting it in that kind of order, did that sort of focus it in that way for you?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that made me realize that how different we sounded before, and how some of it was pretty good, some of it was kind of silly.
What was silly?
Sometimes just the presentation was kind of squeaky. It sounded like a toy band.
Well, now, I read something that you said in retrospect. Well, I don't know if it's in retrospect or you were aware of it at the time, but when someone had pointed out that when you first started out in CBGB's and you were standing on stage looking terrified or awkward or shy or quaking or quacking or whatever it was that you were doing, and now you've grown into this wonderful kind of confident performer, and you said something to the effect that when you started, you did that purposely because it was very minimalist and that you wanted to sort of, it was a reaction to everything else that was going on and you wanted to sort of strip it down to the bare bones. Were you really aware of it in that way at that time?
No, I was aware of the fact that there wasn't any lighting and all that kind of thing, and that we were wearing our street clothes, but my stage demeanor I was pretty unaware of. I wasn't aware that I looked so terrified.
Did you feel terrified?
A little bit, but not. I mean, I always do when I go on stage. I still do get, real butterflies and stuff before you walk on stage. No, I wasn't. I was aware that it was a pretty bare bones approach, but I wasn't aware that I looked as disturbed as I seem to have looked.
But you have more confidence. Oh, can I have one of those?
Yeah.
I shouldn't be, but I started again. Thanks. Wait a minute. Let me just. Richard likes sound effects. I don't know how he feels about smoking sound effects. Thank you. Did you? But you are aware that you have more confidence now, or you project more confidence, don't you feel? I mean, you...
I'm afraid so, yeah.
Afraid?
Well, it's... If I appear too confident on stage, then I'll just seem like that I don't care about the audience. If I walk out and go, hey, I'm going to show it to you now.
But that's not you. You couldn't do that anyway.
But I guess overconfidence leans towards that.
Well, maybe it's not even confidence. Maybe the word is more... well, it's more developed. The performance is more developed now, It's as if, the movements are...
There's definitely confidence there, too, though.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even attempt some of that unless I thought that I could pull it off.
Well, what about the odd movements? When you ask, where do the odd movements come from? Which odd movements
You're really going through
to?
These, huh?
Not really, actually. I sort of stopped at that one. I was going to ask you some of those anyway. Actually, the suit I did want to know. Why, how do you perceive this as odd movements? I assume we're talking about your odd movements, because really nobody else in the band has any odd movements.
Some of those came from things that happened spontaneously in the early shows, and then a lot of them I would improvise stuff at home in front of my home video stuff, and when I thought I was doing something interesting, I'd push the record button and tape about a minute of it, and so I'd build up a tape that just had a series of minutes of different kind of unique kind of movements, and then eventually I thought, wow, what song could I use that in? Where could I use that? So I put them together that way.
There's a history now, isn't there, for Talking Heads? Does that seem odd to you? It's about 10 years, right?
Yeah.
There's how many? 6 albums?
I guess.
Wait a minute. The first one?
Not that many.
The second one? Fear of Music, Remain in Light, Name of this band, Speaking in Tongues. That's 7.
And I'm writing songs for the next one.
What do they sound like? Do you know yet?
Yeah. They're in a variety of styles, and most of them are quite melodic, because I've been using a real traditional songwriting kind of approach of like strumming a guitar and singing along, and then I'll take that to the band and we'll flesh it out. So one is kind of like a Tex-Mex kind of polka beat, and one has it's like a gospel number. We've done that. We've approached that before. One is just a ballad about the people who immigrated to the town. That kind of stuff.
So how does it differ when you're doing a soundtrack? This is essentially a soundtrack to something, but the songs, I would imagine, could stand on their own.
Yeah.
But you're constantly aware that there's this theme to it. Is that the first time you've done that, really? Aside from just putting this soundtrack
I've done
together.
stuff for dance the Twyla Tharp's dance thing and
Right.
stuff for Bob Wilson, but this is real different because the songs either are an expression of a particular character or a situation, which is kind of nice, because then it's kind of all set in front of me what it has to be about and what it has to say.
Is that easy?
Yeah, because it's real tough when you sit down in front of a blank piece of paper and you have to ask yourself, what do I have to say? What do I want to say? But in this case, I can say, what do I want to say through this character?
But didn't you do that before? You told me once that was Psycho Killer.
Yeah,
that
that's
you were
true.
writing
So
about
maybe
what
these
you
are-
thought that kind of a character
Maybe,
would be.
yes, and then I abandoned that. I did that one song like that, and then I kind of abandoned it more, sort of, not completely, but for a lot of stuff. I tried to write about aspects of my own personas, and so maybe this is going all the way back to that first song, and using that approach.
Do you feel that a lot of these songs that you've done have really been very personally revealing? I mean, home, heaven, life during wartime, those are all the way you think about those things?
They're all about ways I can think about those things. They're all like possible scenarios that I can believe in. But I wouldn't want to say, yeah, that's what I believe about that. It's something where I said, yeah, I could believe that. That seems plausible. Whereas I don't see myself as a guy like a psycho killer hearing voices and that kind of stuff.
Never?
No, I've never heard it. I've never done any of that.
Could you also take any one of those subjects of those songs that I just mentioned and write completely an opposite point of view?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done that. I wrote one, Don't Worry About the Government, about liking kind of ordinary things, living in a kind of modern condominium and working in an office. Then I think on the record after that I wrote a song, A Big Country, about hating that kind of stuff. I thought I had to be fair.
Present both sides of the
Uh-huh.
issue. What did you want this movie, Stop Making Sense, to be, sort of, in terms of concert films? What were you determined to avoid, or what sort of things were you hoping about it? Did it turn out the way you wanted it to?
I think it did. I wanted it to be like a movie. In that it has...
You mean as opposed to a concert?
Yeah. I wanted it to almost cross that barrier. That you walk away with it feeling like you've seen a movie, rather than that you've seen a documentary about a concert. And it kind of does that. It definitely has a progression, a kind of a beginning and a middle and an end. And a lot of concerts don't have that. They just have a succession of songs.
What do you perceive of as the differences between this live album and the name of this band, this Talking Heads live album?
This one, the way it's mixed and whatnot, it almost doesn't sound like a live album. It almost sounds like a live performance in a studio.
Is that what it was? I
No.
mean, did you enhance it a lot? Did you change it?
No, just really well mixed and well recorded. The other one was more kind of documenting some of the different styles we'd played in. And this one is more documenting this one event, this one tour.
Do you ever think of doing anything just again with the four of you?
Yeah.
The next record, or no?
Well, I don't know. It seems like we can't go on just trying to get bigger and bigger. That's kind of a dead end. And it would cost a lot of money, too. So I'm not sure what to do next for a live performance.
What sort of things do you want to do other than this? I mean, it seems as though your next project, you're using the band as a sort of very integral part of it. And but I can't imagine that that's all you're thinking of doing. You must have a million different kinds of projects you want to do, no?
Yeah, but I'm mainly just concentrating on this one right now. And in the back of my mind wondering, what kind of stage performance are we going to do? Can we do that isn't a repetition of what we've done before? And I haven't come up with that yet.
When do you have to come up with that?
No, there's no set time. There's no deadline.
When around do you think that this would come out? This next album and this movie?
I guess in the late spring.
You'd make the movie in the late spring, or you'd do the record first?
Do the record first. And then shoot the movie in the early spring and maybe get it done by late spring, summer.
And then go back out on the road?
No, then I think we should probably do another one. And then have lots of new stuff to perform live. That would seem to be pretty good.
Do you think it's going to get to the point where you're not going to want to perform live, that you can do everything you want to do through either video or film?
Nah.
Did you ever think there was? I mean, was there like 10 minutes when you were thinking, like, this is the way out?
Yeah. There was times when I thought, I think everybody thought about it, that with the advent of cable TV and video and all that sort of thing, everybody thought, hey, you won't have to tour again. You do one performance somewhere, and they'll satellite it to every city, and everybody can catch it simultaneously, and your tour will last about a week. And but it's not the same. I think the band and performers learn something about what they're doing by doing it in front of an audience. But I don't think you have to do that all the time. But have to jump out there occasionally and see how you're doing, and keep in contact with I don't know, what would you call it?
People.
People, but I'm thinking of something else. It sort of tells you what the songs mean, in a way, or what the music means, or what it feels like to perform it live. Because when you just record it in the studio, you play it once and you get a good take, and that's it. You never have to play it again. And so you never really, it never really sinks in what the energy of that song is about, or what it could be about. So, I'm ready for another question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never know with you. That's why I just watch you. Sometimes you stop, and then you're about to say something again, and I don't want to interrupt you. Talking Heads is a big band now. Can you accept that as such? I mean,
No.
in terms of the whole rock genre?
No, I don't. I still can't.
Well, you don't think you're some kind of cultist avant-garde?
No, I think we've transcended that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're thought of as a band that people have discovered for themselves, rather than a band that's so pervasive in the media that you couldn't help but know about us.
Well, what's a band like that? You mean like Van Halen or the Rolling Stones or something?
Yeah, where everybody knows about them, even if they're not into it.
Do you want to be a band like that?
Not necessarily, but I like the idea of being a part of the culture and not being thought of as an outsider who comments on it. I like being thought of as being part of it, but also you can comment on it at the same time.
Do you think that's possible?
Yeah.
Well, do you think it's a question of the culture catching up with you, or you assimilating more into the culture?
Oh, a little bit of both, I guess. I guess you're supposed to keep your ears open, or try and articulate things that everybody's thinking or feeling.
But you do have also a sort of a quirky look at things. You don't want to give that up. You can't.
No.
Abandon that.
It's kind of hard.
Do you handle it all a lot better now? I mean, if you have to come and do a day and a half of promotion, and you have to sit and do a bunch of interviews and go to a premiere and go to a party and then fly to L.A. and go to... I mean, is that something you always would have done willingly and enjoyed and moved gracefully through, or do you feel that it took you 10 years to be able to sort of handle that? Or do you not feel comfortable about it?
I think it probably takes time to handle it. You're probably right that the success we've had has come real gradually. And so with each increment, when our audience has grown, we've had time to adjust to that. When we made the step from playing clubs to playing small theaters, we had time to adjust to trying to sound and accommodate to that and all that kind of stuff, instead of going from playing little teeny clubs to having to do huge arenas and stuff, which is just an impossible thing to ask of somebody, I think.
How has your life changed? Are you more settled down? You've been in a relationship with somebody now for a while, and I don't know what that... I read an article about David Byrne in love, and it was this whole thing about getting married and having children.
I'm not ready for all that.
No?
No.
Does it make you nervous?
it makes me nervous that I don't feel like doing that. That I don't feel like settling down and having kids.
But why should you?
Well, I just figure over this.
You're an artist.
I figure biologically I'm supposed to at this point in my life, but I still feel like, well, I move around so much and I don't have regular hours. I mean, I try to get up in the morning and go to bed around midnight, but there's still, I mean, one day I'll be working at home all the time, and then a week later I'll be working in the studio or running around doing something else. That's not very steady and stuff. So, and I like that, so I'll keep with it as long as I like it.
But you don't feel necessarily having a solid relationship with somebody interferes with your artistic endeavors, do you?
No.
You don't feel you have to be crazy and lead some kind of wild life in order to be able to create stuff?
No, I'm crazy in my mind. And I don't have to be crazy in public, except on stage.
Do you think you look crazy on stage?
No, I think I look like I'm expressing the craziness in all of us. But I'm not actually nuts. I'm letting it come out. What's already there.
You're sure of that?
Yeah. I think I'd know by now if I was nuts.